Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We'll wait just a moment for everyone to join the session. Seems we have people joining from all over the country today, which is awesome. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, we will get started. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Charlie, and I'm the graphic designer and marketing coordinator here with Charity Village. As we are gathering here on a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. As a settler on this land, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. And for those of you who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you're looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed that when you join the webinar, you are automatically placed on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. So look for that at the bottom of your screen. We'll be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible, but in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you will still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for today, Kathy Archer, Leadership Development Coach. Welcome, Kathy.
Hey, Charlie, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on today and for the opportunity to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. We've popped a poll up for you. I would love to know which of these statements, for those of you who are joining us live and those of you joining on the replay, pop them into the comment section on YouTube as well. Which of these statements most describes your current leadership style? I was talking to Charlie and Marina before we started. There's a fairly high attendance today, so obviously something's going on. Are you just holding it together but barely? Are you always in reactive mode? Or are you trying to lead well, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like you? Or are you just mostly aligned? But of course, as most of us, still working on it. We will give you a minute to answer that question as we get started today. Really curious sort of what people are experiencing and where they're going. All right, Charlie's got the results up. We are mostly aligned. That's good. Yay, mostly aligned, but still working on it. I'm glad to hear people are working on it. And sometimes the second runner-up, I try to lead well, but it doesn't always feel like me. Absolutely. And that's why we're here today. We really want to talk about that. If you've ever felt like you're supposed to lead a certain way, but deep down it's not working for you, you're in the right place. That feeling is exactly why I wrote my most recent book, Character-Driven Leadership for Women. It's based on my own experience of trying to keep it all together, lead in the way that I thought I was supposed to lead, and not, feel good about it and lose myself in the process. So today's session is built around the lessons that I learned in that book, and my hope is that it helps you also find a way of leading that actually feels like you. And for the men tuning in, because I'm sure there are some guys on our call today, I'm glad you're here. While I focus on women leaders, everything we're talking about today can help anyone who's ready to lead with more intention, alignment, and authenticity. Now, I didn't write Character-Driven Leadership for Women because I had all the answers. I wrote it because I had to learn, sometimes painfully, what happens when you fall out of alignment with your values as a leader. And I will never forget the moment I realized just how far I had drifted. I was sitting in my office, whispering into my phone with tears running down my face. But let me back up. I had been leading and managing in my organization and everything on my plate with a level of confidence until the arrival of a large new contract that left me scrambling to hold things together. Overnight, the stakes got high really fast. More funding, more responsibility, more staff, more travel, more meetings, more expectations. I felt like I was in that I Love Lucy episode where the conveyor belt is speeding faster and faster. And as much as I tried to balance workload and responsibilities, I couldn't. I was drowning. Our programs, we didn't have the resources or systems or skills to manage that level of expansion. And instead of slowing down to figure it out, I did what most leaders do. I pushed harder. I worked longer hours. I made decisions on the fly. Many of them weren't very good decisions. And I stopped listening in the way I had used to. And my team felt it. I had been the kind of leader they trusted, but now I didn't always keep my word. I didn't follow through on promises. I neglected to listen to people's ideas and I railroaded through with my own. That year, the feedback on my performance appraisal clearly indicated what staff thought of me. Kathy lacks integrity. It literally said that more than once on my performance appraisal. Then, one day, I was hit with something I never saw coming. The staff filed a grievance against me. I felt blindsided. I was embarrassed. I was flustered. And if I'm honest, my first reaction was to blame them. They're out to get me. They don't understand the pressure I'm under. If only they would just help. But blaming them didn't change the reality. My leadership was in question. My integrity was in question. And I had no idea how to fix it. And neither did my boss. But he offered me a coach. I had no idea what coaching was, but I knew in that moment that I needed help. And that's how I found myself sitting at my desk at lunchtime, paper thin walls, so I was hoping everybody would be gone, hunched over my desk, whispering into the phone with tears running down my face. I was telling my coach about the grievances, about the staff who didn't like me, and about how I felt. I told him, honestly, I have no idea if I want to be here anymore. And he listened, and he gently asked questions, helping me to untangle my thoughts. The more he invited me to reflect, the more I started to see the truth. I wasn't showing up as the leader I wanted to be, and that was a hard pill to swallow. I had been so caught up in the stress of just surviving every day that I wasn't leading in a way that aligned with my values. The things that mattered most to me, family, integrity, treating people with respect, they weren't guiding my leadership. I had lost my way. That night, I went home and I pulled out my journal, and instead of writing about how everyone ticked me off and about the grievance and all of my frustrations, I actually wrote about who I wanted to be. I wrote about what integrity meant to me, about the type of leader I wanted to become, and what it would take to make that change. Now, when I look back, that was probably where the foundation of character-driven leadership for women began. But it didn't stop there. As I started applying what I'd learned, I began coaching other women who were struggling with the same challenges that I was faced with. They were overwhelmed. They felt out of alignment. They questioned if they were really cut out for leadership. And one by one, as they did the inner work, I saw them transform. They shifted from reacting to leading with intention, from feeling stuck to stepping forward with confidence, and from doubting themselves to knowing they were exactly where they were meant to be. And that's when I knew this needed to be in a book, because real leadership, the kind that you and I both want, the kind that brings us that contentment and peace and confidence and fulfillment, it starts from the inside. And you don't have to wait until you're at that breaking point to make that choice to change. But maybe you are, or close to, or have been at your breaking point. And maybe you came to this webinar because you'd like to discover a different way. First, let me tell you, you're not broken. You've been taught to lead in a way that doesn't fit you. You've probably been leading by somebody else's rules, and it's time to write your own. Pop a note into the chat box, a word that describes how you felt the last time you hit your breaking point as a leader. What are some of the words that might describe how you felt when you hit yourself, or when you hit that breaking point? I have a question for you though. How would you feel If you had the opportunity to go to work at a place where you felt valued and respected and you got to use your gifts, talents, and strengths every day, and you came home at the end of the day with energy left for the rest of your life. I promise you that's possible. And yes, it's possible in the nonprofit sector. But before we get there, let's start with maybe where you are at right now. If you're like most leaders, you are whacking moles. Fire, crisis, drama, email, go to this meeting, to have this conversation with this person, write this report, apply for this money. As soon as something pops up, three more things pop up before you've caught your breath. You rush to make decisions. You struggle to find time to think. And you certainly never have time to think strategically, plan in a meaningful way, and let alone take care of yourself. Working in this way, we feel frazzled, overwhelmed, exhausted, and it takes its toll. And if you were like I was, you're keeping it together on the outside, sort of, but it's costing you on the inside. And leading like this keeps you stuck in survival mode. Survival mode is part of a continuum that I teach. You're always afraid of dropping the ball. You're struggling to keep things together. Maybe you feel isolated and unsupported, because that's certainly how I felt. And honestly, you're just trying to keep your head above water. Burnout in this state is real. It's a huge risk. This is where I was when I fell apart with my team. I literally was barely hanging on. No judgment. Pop a comment into the chat box. What's something you're doing lately that just screams survival mode? Maybe it's you're always skipping lunch. Maybe you're hopping onto email after the kids go to bed, or maybe you snapped at someone, or maybe you missed your kid's big event. Where we want to be is thriving, and it is possible. At this end of the spectrum, you actually enjoy your job. You're engaged, confident, productive. You feel supported and connected. You're making a positive impact with your work. Thriving is where the magic happens. This is where I was when I was actually writing that big proposal for that contract we got. I felt alive and energized and engaged and on purpose. And many of us just find ourselves in the middle, kind of that round and round the hamster wheel we go, kind of that another day, another dollar kind of thing. We're doing more than just surviving, but we're not fully thriving. And often here, we fail to recognize the warning signs that we're moving into survival mode. These might be some of them. So pop a comment or pop a comment. Comment on the poll where you are right now in terms of the surviving to thriving continuum. Are you barely hanging on? Are you just keeping your head above water? Maybe you actually feel steady and strong. Or like, does it depend on the day and where you're at and what's going on? Which of these is sort of your go-to place that you spend a lot of your time as a leader? We are very curious to know. Survival mode is, lots of people describe it different ways, but yeah, I will often hear the thing, oh, I'm just getting by, or I'm barely hanging on, or like it's just crazy, or we hear all different kinds of ways. Just depends on the hour is the winner, absolutely. And it can vary from place to place to place. And many of you also say you're just keeping your head above water. Notice that only 13% of us are feeling steady and strong. And imagine if more of us were, if more of us were sort of moving into that next stage where we felt much more confident, composed, calm. So the thing is that surviving to thriving continuum is closely intertwined with another continuum. And I call it the toxic to magnetic continuum. Surviving to thriving is your individual experience, but that toxic to magnetic is about your team culture and team dynamics. So as a leader, whether you're in surviving or thriving, your mindset, your behaviors, your attitudes, it's profoundly influencing the workplace environment. When you're operating in survival mode, it can foster a toxic atmosphere. On the other hand, if you're thriving, you're radiating energy, passion, resilience. You're creating that magnetic place where people actually feel engaged, valued, and inspired. If you've ever been part of a magnetic environment, pop a comment into the chat box. What did it feel like? What did it feel like to be part of that workplace culture that was magnetic? So we've got toxic place, fear, distrust, gossip, avoidance, or in my case, a grievance filed against me. Magnetic, where there's that trust, energy, engagement, and growth, and then everything in between. Now, survival mode doesn't have to be a permanent place. It starts by giving yourself permission to lead differently, not harder, not tougher, not by putting in more hours, but by leading with your strength of character. The thing is, you're probably doing everything right. You're working hard, you've checked the boxes, you're getting things done. But if we're honest, it doesn't feel good. It feels heavy, exhausting, off. It's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because you've been taught to lead in a way that doesn't reflect who you really are. Today is not about overhauling the nonprofit sector, although Lord knows we might need to do that. It's not about turning your life upside down or about finding yourself or simply setting boundaries. It's about helping you reconnect with the type of leader you want to be, realign with your values, and learn how to take small, intentional steps to show up with purpose and confidence. The thing is, you didn't end up in survival mode because you're bad at your job. You got here because the leadership model you were handed doesn't fit. You were told to be professional, stay objective, don't show emotion. But that version of leadership, it's not sustainable and it's not true to who you are. You learn to stay in control, keep it together, never show weakness. That's exhausting. Traditional masculine models of leadership ignore your values, your emotions, and your ability to build real relationships. We were taught, directly or indirectly, that leadership should be more masculine, tough, task focused, maybe even competitive. And as a result, many of us have spent years hiding the parts of ourselves that didn't seem to belong at work. So we push down those traits that make us powerful: empathy, vulnerability, connection. Those aren't weaknesses, they are your greatest strengths. Women are strong, effective leaders, often outperforming men when it comes to team engagement and transformational impact. The question is, how do you reclaim the parts of yourself that you've pushed down? My question is, how open are you to a new way? The new way is character driven leadership. Character isn't about perfection, it's about the patterns of behaviors others experience from you and the impact of behaviors. Let me say that again. It's about the patterns of behaviors others experience from you and the impact of those behaviors. I'll often talk about your conduct using the or your behavior using the word conduct. So your character is about how you're conducting yourself. And sometimes our conduct is off because, as we've seen, we've been leading like men, we're way too overloaded, or we didn't get the specific leadership training when we moved from frontline into leadership. Let's start with leadership. Leadership isn't your job title. It's not a task on your to-do list. It's how you show up every day in every interaction. Your job as a leader is to influence people so that together you can do the mission critical work. You do that by motivating, coaching, inspiring, and mentoring your team. But here's the thing: how you do those things matters most. Your character shows up in how you act, speak, and handle situations. And that affects how your team acts, speaks, and handles things too. Your conduct shapes their mindset. Let me say that again. Your conduct, how you behave, act, what you say, don't say, shapes their mindset. It shapes how they feel about the work and about you. Our character, or perhaps more aptly put, Charlie and Maureen and I were talking before we hopped on about the character of some people that we're hearing about in the news lately. Our character, or perhaps more aptly put, our lack of character, is the biggest reason for leadership failure. Leaders without integrity fail to gain the trust of their team. And I know that from experience. When they filed that grievance against me, they very clearly were saying to me, Kathy, you lack integrity. Leaders who have no courage don't inspire others to step up, speak out, or try new approaches. Leaders without the ability to exercise self-control fly off the handle, fall apart emotionally, or make snap judgments. And leaders who have little hope and optimism create a doom and gloom environment, which is definitely not fun to work at. The problem is, many of us ask what we have to do to be a better leader. What training do I need to take? What do I need to say to get them to do what they're supposed to do? While these are important components of leadership, the critical question is deeper than that. It's not what do you have to do to be a good leader? The question is who do you need to be? Anyone can run a meeting, but how do you run a meeting? CEOs, executive directors, and managers communicate with their teams all the time. But how do you communicate with your team? Who are you being when you address an employee's poor performance or maybe even share positive outcomes with the team? Who are you being when the crisis hits? Because how you handle each of these situations will impact what your team thinks about you. And yes, they are judging you. Your character is the mix of qualities, values, and quirks that make you you. The thing is, though, it's not what you think you are or how you hope others see you. It's how people actually experience you. And like it or not, they're forming an opinion of you based on what you consistently say and do. Are you late often? Do you have a habit of dropping F bombs at staff meetings? Are you known for avoiding tough conversations? How do you show up when things fall apart or when something's worth celebrating? It's not one moment. It's the patterns that people notice. Again, it's the patterns that people notice. How you act, how you interact, how you engage. These are the things that shape your character in other people's eyes. It's your actions or inactions that create what they feel and then how they label you behind your back or when they're gossiping or venting with their spouse or work bestie. Think about it. Pop something into the chat. What's one thing you recently judged someone else for as a leader? And then maybe later caught yourself doing. Oh my God, they're always late for meetings. They're so disorganized. They're such a micromanager, right? We judge people all the time. The biggest lesson for me, though, was that when I crashed as a leader, that it wasn't about who I thought I was. It was what my impact on others made them feel. It didn't matter if I thought I was being in integrity if my team didn't think so. And in truth, it wasn't until they were loud and clear about it that I realized they were right. I wasn't leading with integrity, which, if I'm honest, is why I felt so icky and was in survival mode. Your character is their impression of you based on their perspective of you. And yes, the context is important. Their own set of values, virtues, traits is important. Their history, their experience, all of that creates these lenses which they see you through and judge you. The question is, how do you influence someone to judge your character the way you want them to? And the answer is by intentionally managing your conduct. We'll talk in a minute about how to be more mindful about your conduct, but let's first think about how others might describe you. When we think about how we describe ourselves, we start to look at our own character traits, and sometimes those are the ones we want, and sometimes we want to think about, okay, but what are the traits of a good leader? So I want you to think of a leader that you admire, someone that you might look up to. They could be your boss, they could be somebody you had as a leader in the past, could be a character on TV, Ted Lasso, could be somebody who's long gone and you've read a book by them. Think of somebody that you admire and what are some of the traits that you admire about them? Pop those into the chat box for a moment. Marina, I'm going to have a drink. If there's any that pop up that are really good, you can, if anybody shares any, you can share them for a minute.
I'll just quickly mention, Kathy, while you're taking a sip
Yeah.
of water there. Feel free, everyone, to put your statements or what have you into the Q&A box, not the chat box, and then we'll be able to take a look at those. Thanks.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Okay, so when we think about shaping our character and how we influence other people, again, these are words. Sometimes we will use the word character. I admire her character. Boy, that was out of character. She's damaged her character by doing that. But we might also use more specific words. She's so reliable. She's honest. She's got such grace, such determination and persistence. I appreciate her ability to be decisive. Those are all character traits. It might also be the opposite ones that maybe make us cringe. She's so cold. I can't trust her. She's condescending and demeaning. Not words we would want people to describe us. So think about your own reputation. These are some of the sentence prompts that can sort of help you start to think about, how do I want people to describe me? What are the words that I want people to say about me when I walk out of their room at the end of the day to their partner? What do I want to be known for? But why does all this matter? Because people won't follow someone they don't trust. And without trust, you don't have a strong team. You have a workplace full of stress, silence, or resentment, or grievances filed against you. Character-driven leaders create environments where people feel safe, respected, and willing to show up fully. That's what makes work more meaningful instead of draining, and it's what keeps you out of survival mode and prevents you from burning out. The problem is, most of us are busy. We're reacting on autopilot. We're stretched too thin, and we don't stop to think about how we're showing up. We snap when we're frustrated, we get short when we're annoyed, and when we're busy, we just rush past people without even looking up to say hello. Those moments might seem small, but they send a message. And over time, that message chips away at trust. It creates a culture where people go quiet, feel unappreciated, or start counting down the minutes until they can go home or quit. Strong leadership means being intentional, not reactive. It means knowing your impact and choosing your impact to lead with character, even when it's hard. So, as I said earlier, we need to think about and be more mindful about our conduct. So, this is an image from the book. Let me explain it. It starts with our aim. Our aspirational identity is the person we desire to be. It's the person we sort of describe when we talk about ourselves at our best. I'm a compassionate leader. I'm a fair leader. I'm trustworthy. I'm honest. This is your ceiling, or as I call it, your aspirational identity. It's how you define yourself, the story you tell about yourself. It's your highest or best version of yourself. The problem is, we're rarely there. It's an aspirational identity. And because most days we're not at our best, we've talked about this, where most of us are in survival mode half the time, we're not at our best, which leads to our reputation or our character. The way people actually describe us is our floor. It's who we are, often on our worst days, because it's what people actually experience. The floor is how low will you go? What's the worst you will let yourself be? Where's your line? You might say, I have one-to-one supervisions monthly, right? Until you get busy. And then, okay, maybe you miss one or two. But what happens when you've not had a one-to-one supervision in 6 months? Maybe you aim to be that responsive leader and respond to emails quickly and get back to people, but you're not always. And maybe you desire to have work-life balance, but never or don't often achieve that. How low will you go? That bottom bar is often how people will describe you. You can be sweet as pie. You can bake cookies for your team and you can have an open door policy available for your staff whenever they need you. But when the shit hits the fan, you're deep in accreditation, short staffed, and your kid is sick, and you snap at someone, you avoid the tough conversation, you're rude at a meeting, that's what people remember. She's nice until. And people hold on to the patterns of our behavior. She's fine until. You can trust her unless. Whenever blank happens, you know she will what? So the goal of character development is to reduce that gap between our floor and our ceiling. And it is to raise our floor. The floor is how low you will go. What's the worst you will be? Where is your line? How do we do that? By being intentional. It's by taking time to be self-reflective and ask these self-reflective questions, which I talk about in the book. Minimally once a week. I encourage people to do it daily. But we start with, who am I? We embrace our essence. And we ask that, what do I see when I show up? Then we start pondering, who am I becoming? If I was my best self, who would I be? And then we circle back and go, how do I get there, right? And that's that endless growth cycle. So embrace your essence. What makes you you? What is your personality? What's your lived experience? What's important to you, which is your values? What rules do you live by? What are your ethics and morals? In character-driven leadership, I have tons of self-reflective exercises to help with this. I talk about a couple assessments. The VIA Character Strengths Assessment is a free strength assessment you can get online. Just search it. Uh, the Clifton Character Strengths. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, so I will often do my Clifton Strengths with my clients. Again, you can do that on your own. There's just a bit of a cost to it. Ultimately, what you're asking here is what's staying, going, and growing. What are the traits? What are the values? What are the things that I still want to hold on to, demonstrate, show up as? Sometimes we've had values that we got handed to us by our families that maybe don't fit as this in the same way anymore. Maybe we've changed who we are. So some things we want to let go of. Some things we want to mature or grow. Maybe you're compassionate and kind sometimes, but not so much when you're stressed. And so you'll want to figure that one out. When I talked about the leaders that you admire, maybe there's some traits there that you really want to hone. Gallup just came out with a survey recently that said the number one thing that followers want from their leaders is hope. If you don't have hope high, if you don't know how to demonstrate hope, how are you know that's something that you might want to grow. And so we think about remember how your signature back in junior high maybe had some bubbles and hearts and different ways, and now it's just a little bit different? That's matured. Your signature has changed. It's still your signature. So we're not talking about changing you to be something you're completely or you aren't completely, but it's about maturing who you are. And that's why we start to ponder our potential. What is my aspirational identity? If I put energy into developing myself, who would I become? And it starts with looking at how you define yourself. If you talk about, if somebody asked you, just tell me about you. What kind of leader are you? How do you balance work and life? How do you handle conflict? That's kind of your identity. In character-driven leadership, I give you tons of exercises to do this. One of them is the day in the life. And so think about a day 6 months from now, a year from now. What would a day look like? And write that out. What time would you get up? What would your morning routine look like? How would you handle the conflict that popped up? What would your energy levels be like? What would you be doing in the evening? Write your full day out and then live into that. There's a bunch of other exercises. I have a ton of prompts at the end of journal prompts at the end of the book, 4 or 5 pages, to help you really start to do this inner work. So, in one sentence, pop a comment into the chat box. What kind of leader you want to become? What part of you do you want to grow? Maybe you're becoming known for being more decisive because right now maybe you're a bit wishy-washy. Maybe you want to consistently demonstrate boundaries more effectively. Or maybe the leader you're becoming has already figured out to engage in tough conversations without sort of getting too emotional. Who's the you? What are you? How are you growing and developing yourself? And then we're talking about engaging in endless growth. This is not a switch. This is not a one-time thing. This is ongoing growth and development. You need to create that habit of self-reflection, and you do that through your plan. Self-reflection is a habit that keeps you grounded in who you are and who you're becoming. It's not writing dear diary. It's really starting to catch yourself in those moments when you're about to react out of habit and instead choose to respond with intention. Self-reflection is key to character development. I say that in every single chapter in the book, sometimes multiple times. That self-reflection, slowing down, tuning in, checking in to see, am I aligned with my values? Am I speaking my values? Am I making a value-based decision? Have I fallen away from my ethical kind of rules that I set up for myself? Because if you are, that's really hard, and you've got to figure out how to come back. And you come back through those choice points. Endless growth starts with recognizing when you have those small moments where you get to decide how to respond. Because most of us are reacting without thinking, especially under stress. But when you pause and choose with intention, you begin to shape that character one decision at a time. So remember when we talked about those behaviors, those character strengths and those behaviors, patterns of behavior? Your plan is going to need to address those. How am I going to become that leader that I aspire to be so that the patterns of behavior are ones that I'm proud of and that have the impact I want? Because having a plan is how you cultivate the character traits that you're proud of and helps you to feel aligned with your values, ethics, and desires. We're teleological or teleological beings. We need targets. We need goals. Goals help us grow. Goals that are 9 times out of 10 outside of the ones you would see on your performance appraisal. Oftentimes it's around the soft skills that you've never been taught. How are you going to learn those? What are the goals you're working on? Here's some of the ones that often my clients will come to me with. How do I delegate more effectively or set those boundaries? Or maybe I just want to develop leadership skills and I want to learn more. Where am I going to fit that in? Developing that confidence, staying composed during those hard conversations. Remember, people follow leaders less because of what they do and more because of who they are. Your character and your reputation guide your team's engagement and impact. So it's not just so much about what you do, but how you do them. The journey of character-driven leadership is ongoing. It requires you to choose to make character building a priority, pausing to craft that aspirational identity, that ceiling. Where am I aiming at? And then creating your plan. How are you going to get there? And then consciously implementing it. Leading and living with authenticity is a choice. But by making that choice, you can return to feel that sense of balance, get out of survival mode, reclaim that identity so that you feel comfortable in your own skin, restore your reputation. What are people saying about you? And become that character-driven leader that you desire to be. And it starts with working through these 3 character building questions. Who am I? Who am I becoming? And how am I becoming that? Your character isn't just a list of values that you admire. It is how you live that list, especially on the hard days. It shows up in your actions, your tone, how you treat other people and yourself when things don't go as planned. People notice not just what you say, but how you say it and how you respond under pressure. No one expects you to be perfect, but growth comes from choosing to live your values consistently, even when it's tough. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds good, but I don't have time. Or maybe lovely, that worked for you, Kathy, but my situation is different. I get it. But here's what I had to learn. Doing nothing was costing me more. You don't need hours a week to do this. You need moments, micro moments of intention. One moment to think about who do you want to be in that upcoming meeting and the impact you want to have on that other person. Now, you have 3 choices. Walk away from the webinar today and keep doing what you've always been doing and hope for different results. FYI, that's the definition of insanity, or from our work today, staying in survival mode. Option 2, start the inner work on your own. Grab Character-Driven Leadership for Women. It's a solid framework to help you begin leading with more intention and alignment. It's on Amazon and Audible and Indigo. And yes, I did the audio. So if you want to listen to me talk in your ear for several hours, grab the audio version. We're going to pop the links in after, but you can also just get the first chapter for free if you want to check it out to see if it's what going to help you. So option 1, keep doing what you've always been doing and hope for different results. Option 2 is you can start the inner work on your own. And as I said, the book can help you do that. Option 3 is to get ongoing help to do the inner work, to make this lasting inner change by joining the training library. The training library is my membership program. It's designed for nonprofit women leaders just like you who are ready to stop surviving every day and actually thrive. $19.97 a month. You'll get instant access to practical courses, templates, journal tools, decision-making frameworks, training on how to do one-to-one supervision, and much, much more. You'll also join a safe community of women who get it through, no, not a Facebook group, but 2 optional community calls that aren't recorded because I really want to ensure that we have a safe space to talk. It's a space where you don't have to pretend to have it all together. So if you're ready to join, I'd love to have you join. No pressure. You can cancel at any time. But before you make up your mind, ask yourself this. What if I went to work every day at a place where I felt valued and respected and got to use my gifts and talents and strengths every single day? And I came home at the end of the day with energy left for the rest of my life, because that's what the training library gives you, the framework to create that kind of life. You don't have to lead like everyone else. You get to lead your own way. And if you want help with that, you can hop over to my website and find everything there. I am at Kathy D. Archer on all of the socials. My favorite places are LinkedIn and Instagram. And if you are looking for one-to-one coaching, you want some team training, or looking for a speaker, certainly reach out to me. It's Kathy at silverrivercoaching.com. Yes, there are two R's, Silver River. I'm here to help if you want help. Back over to you, Charlie.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We'll start up with the Q&A now. So we had a lot of questions today, so thank you everyone for sending them in. The first question I'll get to today is how do you keep ahead of everything, constantly reprioritizing without a team to support you? So for example, you're the department head and also taking care of like more of the mundane daily tasks.
Oh, it's hard. It's very, very hard. Um, and it comes down to prioritization and learning time management tools, all of which will probably not help you because there's a course actually inside the training library and it's called The Emotions of Time Management. You have more on your plate than you will ever be able to do. And a lot of what you're trying to do isn't a task, but it's supporting somebody that you care about, following through on a mission that's important to you. The perfectionism in the book, I talk about perfectionism and pleasing and performing tendencies that we have. All of this stuff is getting in the way of us really prioritizing and following the time management tools that we need to do. So it's taking a step back, and again, this seems counterintuitive sometimes, but it's taking a step back, looking at your to-do list, prioritizing it in a way that helps you look at, okay, is that really the priority? Um, is there something that is more of a priority? And what happens if I don't do that? What does that say about me if I don't get to that task? What are people going to think about me if I don't do that? Oftentimes that perfectionism in us gets in the way, or that desire to be the people pleaser. And so it's again, back to what I talked about earlier today. It's the inner work that we have to look at to help us say, I cannot do it all. What will I do?
Very well done. The next question we have here is, I am ready to apply for leadership roles, but I am full of self-doubt. Not about the work, but of being caught up in a toxic environment or one that doesn't align with my values. How do I make sure I end up in a magnetic workplace? What are the signs, and how could I identify where I will thrive?
Oh, good question. Do the inner work. Again, you're going to hear this over and over and over again. The self-reflective work is important. So step back and look at again, who am I? What are my values, ethics, and morals? If you haven't done the work to actually identify what those values are, what your rules are for a workplace, what you'll tolerate, what you won't, write those down. Literally write them on a piece of paper. Um, Take the time. Again, in my membership, I have a course called Values Verification, where we don't just take a value, but we define it and we look at how do I make value-based decisions? How do I use that value to align the decisions I'm making and to live fully? So if you're new and going into leadership, create that list now. And I said earlier, it's not just a list, you want to learn to live that list. So then take that list and line it up with the organization that you're looking at. And don't just look at what they say on a website, because most organizations, I shouldn't say most, many organizations have the list but don't live the list. And so you want to talk to people. You want to get that sense. Ultimately, if you want to know whether you're in survival mode or if it's a magnetic environment, is there a pull or is there a push? Do you want to be there? Are you excited to go to work? Are you energized, or does it drain you? Because if it's draining you, then there's something that's off. Now, again, in the nonprofit sector, we have this overwhelm. There's, the always push to do more with less. And so we're going to see that. That doesn't mean you have to totally get sucked into it. It just means that you have to set your boundaries clear from the beginning. But I love that you're being intentional when you're just stepping into leadership. Also, the other thing I would tell you is please, please, please get some leadership training on your own. Create your own personal and professional development plan. I talk about it like a curriculum back in, university or college. What's the syllabus? What's the webinars you're taking? I mean, Charity Village has tons of webinars and courses. What's the podcast you're listening to? What are the leadership books you're reading? Do the work to learn the skills, because 99% of the time, the sector's not going to give them to you.
Awesome. I will ask this question just because you mentioned some leadership books there. But we had some questions about if there's any other leadership books that you would recommend for aspiring leaders.
Yes. Okay. So the first book I wrote was Mastering Confidence. So if you're looking to build your confidence, I would definitely grab one. Second one is my character-driven leadership book. There's probably a page on my website where I list a whole bunch. Actually, I'm positive there's a freebie that where I list a whole bunch of books. Here's the catch. Many of the leadership books that are out there right now were written by, my apologies if I offend anyone, old white guys. The majority of books that we've been learning leadership from were written many, many years ago, and we're regurgitating what people said 60 years ago. And pre-COVID, the world has changed dramatically. We've all changed dramatically. So when you read leadership books, and there are tons of them out there, read them with your own lens. Again, do the work around what are my values? How do I want to show up? Does this book align with the way I want to be? Brene Brown's work certainly has aligned with the way I want to lead. So any of Brene Brown's books, I would recommend. Around emotional intelligence, I think is an important one that we need to learn as leaders. Um, Lisa Feldman Barrett, don't buy her really big, thick book unless you really like to read really big, thick books. But she's got a couple 7.5 Lessons Around the Brain is a good one. Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett is a good one to read around emotional intelligence. In terms of that inner work of leadership, I'm looking at my bookshelf. Leadership from the Inside Out, Kevin Cashman is a good one to go to. And then there's Resonant Leader by Richard Boyatzis and three other people that I probably butchered his name, so I won't even try and butcher their names. But honestly, if you want more books, send me an email and I'll send you a list.
Thank you so much for that, Kathy. Another question we had a few similar questions to this, was I have a situation with an employee where I had to make a decision that they did not agree with. I think I now have lost their trust as they no longer communicate regularly with me. Is there a way for me to rebuild that trust and foster better communication and support for the employee?
100%. And it's going to take time. And trust is built brick by brick by brick. It can be torn down real fast, but it's little moments. So I talked about that earlier. Little decisions you make. You have those choice points, decision by decision. How am I going to interact with this person? Um, and it's doing that on an intentional basis. Now there are 4 components of trust. Here's another good book to read. The Thin Book of Trust by Charles Feltman. 4 components of trust. The first one is competence. Am I actually skilled? So if they don't think you're a skilled leader, which is where I was in the beginning, I hit 2 big leadership lows. The first time I moved into leadership, I was 20 some, had never learned leadership. I wasn't a competent leader. I needed to learn the skills of leadership before people would trust me. So competence is the first one. So when you think about that, you can trust me to coach you. Please don't trust me to fix your car. I am not competent to fix your car. Would not know the first thing about it. Sincerity. Am I sincere in what I say? Oh goodness, the third one is going to escape me at the moment. And it's important. Sincerity. It's about follow through. Am I doing as I say? So if I say I'm going to show up at 10 o'clock, do I actually show up at 10 o'clock? The fourth component of trust is care. Care is the most important of all 4. It is demonstrating that I care about you as an individual. This is why we do team building activities, but it's more than team building activities. And again, this post-COVID world, we don't see each other as often in some places, but it's the conversations we have about how's your dog? How's your mom? You went out to see that client. How are you doing after that? It's that relationship that we need to build. And often, especially as we get busy as leaders, as I said, our to-do lists are massive. We have to learn to balance the relationships and the tasks. And oftentimes the tasks seem to take us away and we're not doing that relationship building. I'll often talk about Gallup's 12 engagement questions. If you just search Gallup Q12, you'll find the questions that Gallup uses to research engagement. And one of them is, do I receive recognition, at least praise or recognition at least once a week? Once a week. Now, as a leader, are you going to say to that person, not good job and pat them on the back, but we're talking about specific recognition. hey, when I seen you do this with that client, I really saw the client's eyes light up. Or in that staff meeting, it was really helpful when you raised your hand and made that point. That's recognition that sometimes we're not doing. That again, brick by brick, brick by brick by brick, you're going to build that trust. It's those little things that build the trust back. Might have got lost on a tangent there. Hopefully, I answered the question.
No, that was great, Kathy.
Yeah.
We have another question here, but this might be a little bit more of a deeper question. How do you start actually self-reflecting when you feel like you don't know who you are sometimes?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. There's so many ways. Again, self-reflection is key to character development. And when I think of self-reflection, it doesn't have to be writing, but writing is a really, really good way to do it. And I know a lot of us, my mom read my diary. I stopped writing for many, many, many years after that. That we have that kind of trauma around the Dear Diary kind of thing. Please don't think of it as that. I will teach you a ton of ways to do that self-reflection. And it's things like sentence prompts. It's things like pretend you're writing a memo to yourself. So, I'm having trouble with this employee. How would you suggest I handle it? And you answer it. You literally write out the answer. It can be like pros and cons kinds of lists or things like that. But it's literally stopping and tuning in, finding a way, a system that works for you. But if you really want to do that self-reflective work, it's really about slowing down and pausing. Um, it can be how, a coaching session can be an opportunity to do some of the self-reflective work. It can be a moment with your supervisor. It can be by yourself, sitting out on a rock someplace, just, meditating. It can be sitting in your car on your lunch break and writing some notes down in the back of a notebook. Those are all different ways to do the self-reflective work. But oftentimes, and this is why, like I said, I realized I needed to write character-driven leadership, because when when I had my very first call with my coach, he asked me about my values and I didn't know. I had no idea what integrity really meant. I kind of went on this wild goose chase to research integrity, which led me to where I am today, because I didn't know. That's self-reflective work. I could go on and on, but I hope that answers it a little bit.
Yes, thanks, Kathy. That was awesome. So we'll get into a couple more questions here before we wrap up. Next one here is, I often encounter managers sharing concerns that they feel staff are challenging or undermining them when staff ask questions or resist direction. How can managers and leaders engage with staff in these situations and not take it personally or get defensive?
Hmm. Oh, yes, it hurts sometimes. Again, I'll say it, you're going to hear me say this over and over again. It's doing the inner work. Why are you getting defensive? What's the trigger that's happening that's making you feel that way? So, um, if you have sort of been had that imposter syndrome, you don't think you're cut out for the job, or maybe since you were young, you've learned you're never going to make it, or whatever the thing is in your head, and something somebody says to you implies that you're incompetent, ooh, that's going to hit, right? It might be that honesty is incredibly important to you. I'll share this story quickly that, again, I was sharing with Charlie and Marina before we started. I use AI. I use AI to help me rewrite things and to do research. And I had sent an email to somebody that I had told AI what to write, but I wanted AI to format it for me. And at the beginning of the email, the I forgot to take out the line that said, "Please take out the hyphens, ChatGPT, because they drive me nuts." And it was left in the email. And so I got this response from somebody saying, "Thanks for your email, but realize you left the AI thing in it." And it just hit, because for me, integrity is incredibly important. Somebody else might have looked at that and just shrugged it off immediately, and it might not have bothered. Yeah, so what? I used AI. Like, no, no big deal, right? For me, it just hit at my integrity. Like, people are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm cheating with AI. And so when we get defensive and when we get triggered by people, we have to figure out what that trigger is. It's you can have that same employee make the same comment to three different people, and those three different people are going to react in a different way. It's an individual reaction based on what's important to us. And so we have to do that work so that we're not getting that trigger. So as I said, those books around emotional intelligence will help. There's a book by Don't Bite the Hook by Pema Chodron. Really, really good book to read. To think about how we get hooked by things and literally like we can't let it go and we're bothered by it. And so it's learning to go, what's going on here? Why am I reacting in this way? Um, I will often teach people to notice their body sensations. I said a minute ago I felt socked in the gut. Some people will get hot, right? You feel that heat rising. That's that sense of shame or embarrassment. What are you embarrassed about? What's the shame trigger that's hitting you right now? When you start to recognize that, you can detach from it and then see that situation in a different way. 99% of the time, it's probably not about you, but we get hooked into it. And so it's slowing that down and doing this. So, what I will often tell clients to do is write sort of what's the situation and then rewrite it. Like, if you wanted it to be different, what would be different? How would you manage your emotions in that moment? That's emotional intelligence. How would you manage their emotions in that moment? That's social intelligence. Those are skills, again, back to those goals that you need to write. They're soft skills. Those aren't skills you were taught. Nobody ever, probably because your leaders didn't, the person you moved into didn't know how to do it, or they didn't have time to do it. Those are things that you're not getting when you move from frontline into leadership. You must create your own plan, your own goals. Where are you going to learn those skills from? How are you going to get that so that you can have that emotional intelligence so you're not getting triggered in those sessions?
Awesome, Kathy. All right, we'll do one more question for today. Any recommendations for moving into a leadership position, excuse me, where now you'll be managing your former colleagues?
Oof. There's a blog on my website about this. Um, and it was part of the reason why I struggled. One of my less fine moments, that's not grammatically correct, but my less fine moments was when I had moved into a leadership position and I had been peers with my admin support and suddenly I was supervising my admin support and we were fighting for power, literally. Like we were both, you could, if I look back on it, that's exactly what was happening. And I very vividly remember, again, paper thin walls, so I know everybody heard, but me yelling at her in my office. Not one of my finer moments for sure. It's hard. Again, there are lots of things that pull us in. And part of it is um, we have a different relationship now, and the power balance has changed, and we have to recognize that. And it's hard to change the way that relationship is because again, back to those habits. We have the habit of, sending them text at meeting going, "Oh my God, did you see what happened over there?" And now suddenly that's not okay to do. It's not appropriate to do. One of the things that I will tell you most when you move into leadership is find that safe group of people that you can talk to. Find your mentors, your guides, your coaches, your peers where you can talk to people because again, you used to talk to these people and that line you can't do that same conversation with. Ultimately, it takes a very perhaps uncomfortable conversation, and maybe more than one around boundaries, around clarity and honesty around what I can and cannot share with you, or how our relationship's going to go. Um, and it's just going to be different. Many people try and have a different relationship outside work than in work. I haven't seen that be very effective. It's hard to go, to wine and paint night on Friday night and then come back Monday and maybe have to address an issue with them. The relationship's going to change, and that's just the nature of our world. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you for presenting such an informative webinar. Do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off for the day?
Self-reflection is key to your character development. It really, truly is. You need to pause, slow down, and work on the goals you create. That's how you grow. Goals help us grow, and you need to work on them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. I just wanted to remind everyone that you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom as well following the session. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for our next free webinar on June 19th, Cash Flow Clarity, Building Financial Literacy Through Real-World Expense Strategies for Canadian Nonprofits. You can find more information on this and all of our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Alternatively, sign up for our newsletter and to make sure that you don't miss the next webinar hosted by Charity Village. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.